This is going to be kind of long, guys, but please stick with me. I'm trying to prove to you something. I'm trying to show you something. Because what I have observed living in Buffalo, standing in neighborhoods where policy outcomes become visible in real time, is that many Democrat political operatives no longer persuade through evidence at all. They persuade through emotional priming. Let me explain. That emotional priming, identity attachment, grievance, reinforcement, and repetition. What you've been seeing over and over and over and over. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's behavioral science, folks. It's mass psychology and social conditioning. You didn't think these Democrats were just talking to talk. They're doing something. The most effective political movements understand something ancient about we human beings. Emotion always outruns logic and rationale in populations raised under chronic stress. Now just listen to me. When entire communities are shaped by fatherlessness, unstable homes, trauma exposure, impulsive environments, public chaos, poor educational outcomes, constant cortisol elevation, food instabilities, namely food deserts, addiction exposure, and normalized emotional dysregulation, people become easier to steer psychologically through outrage, through fear, racial identity, and symbolic language. That's just observable reality. A child raised without consistent masculine structure often develops or will develop differently neurologically. This is scientific fact, folks. They not only develop neurologically different, but behaviorally different than a child raised in a loving, stable, two-parent environment. The data on this is just overwhelming. Again, you could just go somewhere and argue with yourself about this. But impulse control, delayed gratification, emotional regulation, educational performance, incarceration rates, aggression metrics, addiction vulnerability, and long-term economic stability all correlate heavily on this family structure. That does not mean every fatherless child fails. I could just hear the more simple of you saying, well, I was raised without a dad and I turned out fine. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that environments matter. I'm sorry, but what I see is liberals and political activists exploiting instability rather than repairing it. Instead of teaching discipline, emotional restraint, critical thought, ownership, marriage, and long-term planning, they continuously inflame emotional identity politics. It's the Democrat way, because emotionally reactive populations are just politically useful. You're useful, filled with feelings like that. And if you can keep a person perpetually offended, perpetually suspicious, perpetually angry, perpetually seeing themselves as powerless victims of an invisible system, then you can direct their behavior almost automatically, folks. Democrat language alone becomes programming language. Like you would code for Python or HTML. It's literally programming language for you. Systemic racism, threat to democracy, voter suppression, white supremacy, existential danger, repeated endlessly. Not because every claim is objectively measurable, but because emotional repetition alters perception. How do I know this? Well, cognitive science has shown repeatedly that repeated assertions gain perceived truthfulness. Because you repeat it, they believe it. It appears truthful, especially through familiarity alone. The human brain conserves energy by accepting repeated narratives as socially safe positions of thought. That's why many people stop evaluating the claims at all. They just stop evaluating the claims as being empirically true, objective truth, or rational, or actually factual. So when you see someone on The View spouting all this nonsense, you get filled with feelings, oh, it's the white man. Then they begin reacting tribally. It's engineered for that. And once emotion overrides analytical reasoning, contradiction no longer matters. You've talked to a person who you can tell the truth to, you can talk rationally to, you can literally give them ample logic and data. And once emotion overrides analytical reasoning, rational thought, and logic, contradiction no longer matters. A politician can preside over collapsing schools, rising overdoses, violent streets, economic decline, exploding dependency or welfare, WIC, SNAP, EBT, whatever, and failing literacy rates, yet still retain the support if it's emotionally identified as a framework to their situation. As long as it remains intact, these people will continue voting for it. That's astounding, folks. It's extraordinary. But that's the brilliance of psychological operations, and the Democrats are performing a psychological op on you. You no longer need performance. You only need emotional capture. Listen, I live in a black urban environment, but one's especially devastated by decades of failed governance. There exists a tragic vulnerability to this method because generations have now been raised inside of instability itself. Chaos becomes normalized. Emotionality becomes normalized. Public confrontation becomes normalized. Fathers absent from the home become normalized. Independency becomes normalized, including bastard children in illegitimate births. That becomes normal. As a matter of fact, it becomes a point of pride. And then anyone speaking uncomfortable truths like me is labeled a traitor. Just watch it. You can see this happen over and over in your own city. Turn on any liberal news channel, actually any channel at all, and you'll see this happening over and over and over. I've watched people reject objective truth, objective outcomes directly in front of their faces because the political party has become emotional and quasi-religious rather than rational and God-fearing. This is why some people become furious when confronted with statistics about education, marriage collapse, addiction, violent crime, economic dependency, and facts that threaten emotional architecture that the Democrats have built and conditioned the one inside of it to respond. And yes, sophisticated political strategists absolutely understand this dynamic. Campaigning consultants, media firms, behavioral scientists, social media engineers, and messaging experts study emotional contagions and identity reinforcement and attention economics and outrage cycles and mass persuasion constantly. Entire industries have been built around manipulating your perception. And the deep tragedy is that most communities suffering from this are often communities being emotionally activated the hardest. Like my community in Buffalo, in a blue city, in a blue state. These people aren't healed. They're not stabilized. They're not being strengthened by these Democrats. They're being activated. A truly compassionate movement would focus relentlessly on restoring fathers, rebuilding families, improving literacy, reducing addiction, restoring emotional discipline, teaching ownership, teaching generational wealth, rewarding merit, strengthening churches, encouraging entrepreneurship, which means starting your own businesses, and reducing dependency entirely. Because stable people are harder to manipulate, and they know this. They depend on you and your emotionally explosive moods. Some of you probably have already stopped listening to this because I hurt your feelings. Don't care. Emotionally disciplined communities are just harder to weaponize, folks. And independent thinkers are dangerous to the Democrat political machine. I'm going to be a problem because I'm going to tell you the truth.